People think family breaks all at once in one explosive fight, one betrayal too big to forgive. But the truth is, it fractures quietly over time, until one day you realize there's nothing left to hold together. For me, it started years before that day by the pool. Caroline was always the golden child. Even her mistakes were framed as charm. When she crashed Dad's car at 17, he said, "That's what insurance is for." When I got a B in calculus, he told me I didn't raise you to be average. Mom played her part, perfectly smiling, smoothing things over, never taking sides, but always standing closer to Caroline. I learned early that silence kept the peace even when peace was poison. Then Sophie was born, and suddenly silence wasn't enough. I wanted my daughter to have what I never did: affection without condition. So I tried again. Family dinners, phone calls, holidays. I convinced myself they were changing. That maybe after becoming a mother, I could fix what had been broken since childhood. It worked for a while, or I made myself believe it did. Dad bought Sophie a pink bicycle. Mom sent cards on her birthdays. Caroline pretended to care. I told myself those gestures meant something. But beneath it, the same hierarchy ruled: Caroline first, me second, Sophie last. Always last. The day of the barbecue wasn't some random explosion. It was the moment 1,000 tiny cuts finally drew blood. The tension had been there all morning. Caroline's sharp jokes, Mom's condescending smile, Dad's constant corrections. I kept swallowing it down, telling myself, just get through the day. Until Sophie laughed near the pool, until Caroline pushed her, until my father's hands closed around my neck. And that's when I knew this wasn't a family anymore. It was a hierarchy that demanded my silence and punished my love. The day started the way most disasters do, pretending to be normal. The Moore family barbecue was an annual ritual, a performance of togetherness, choreographed to hide the rot underneath. Caroline was, of course, the star. Her new house, her perfect husband, her perfect life. Every word dripped with curated envy. I came alone with Sophie. My daughter clutched her teddy bear the entire drive, asking if Grandma would like her dress. I told her yes, because 8-year-olds deserve hope even when you don't. The house smelled like grilled meat and perfume too sweet, too forced. Dad stood by the grill like a general barking orders about overcooked steaks. Mom flitted between guests, all pearls and performance. Caroline spotted me first. "Well, if it isn't our hard-working little sister," she said, smiling wide enough for the neighbors to see. "Still driving that old Honda?" I smiled back, still needing to compare. Her jaw tightened, but she laughed. "Oh, Elena, you're always so serious. You should relax. It's a family day." Family. The word felt foreign. Lunch blurred into polite small talk and swallowed resentment. Every time Sophie spoke, Caroline corrected her. Every time I answered, Dad interrupted. By dessert, I could taste the tension in the air, metallic like a storm waiting for thunder. Sophie wandered near the pool, tracing circles on the water with her fingers. Caroline joined her, smiling that brittle, photo-ready smile. I remember thinking, just breathe, Elena, it's fine. Then came the sound. A sharp splash. A scream that wasn't loud enough. I turned and everything slowed. Sophie was underwater, her arms thrashing. Caroline stood frozen, her hand still outstretched from the push, laughter fading into horror. My chair clattered backward as I ran, but before I could reach the edge, my father's hand clamped around my throat. "Don't," he growled. "You'll make a scene." A scene. My child was drowning and he was worried about a scene. In that single breathless moment, I understood every lesson they'd ever taught me. Appearances matter more than people. Silence is obedience, and obedience is survival. But Sophie was my reason to stop surviving. I don't remember thinking. My body just moved. I clawed at my father's arm nails, scraping skin air, burning in my throat. For a heartbeat, I saw his face calm, detached, like he was disciplining a disobedient child instead of holding back a mother from saving hers. Then something inside me broke. I drove my elbow into his ribs hard enough to hear him grunt. He let go just long enough for me to stumble free and dive. The water hit me like ice. For a second, everything was soundless. Blue, muffled, endless. Then I saw her. Sophie's dress floated around her like pale ribbons, her small hands reaching toward the light. When I pulled her up, she gasped, coughing eyes wide with confusion and fear. I dragged her to the edge, lifted her out, and collapsed beside her, chest heaving. She was shaking. "Mommy," she cried, "Grandpa, he stopped you." I froze. That sentence, so small, so innocent, sliced through every excuse I'd ever made for this family. Every, "they didn't mean it," every, "just let it go." I looked around and saw them for who they truly were. Dad expression blank, one hand on his glass. Mom standing motionless, lips pressed thin. Caroline watching, eyes wide, not with guilt, but irritation. No one moved, no one came. I pulled Sophie closer, wrapping her in the towel someone had dropped, her wet hair clinging to my arm. She sobbed against my chest and I whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true, not yet. They'd shown me their truth. I couldn't unsee it. I stood up, still drenched, still trembling, and met my father's eyes. "You'll never touch her again," I said quietly. "Any of you." He smirked, that cruel, dismissive smirk I'd known all my life. "And who's going to stop me?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for the first time I wasn't afraid I was awake, and that for people like him is the beginning of the end. The next morning I woke up with bruises around my neck and a new kind of silence in my chest. Not fear, something colder. Something that hummed. Sophie was asleep beside me, curled up under the blanket, her breathing soft but uneven. I traced her little hand and whispered a promise I hadn't said out loud before. "No one will ever hurt you again, not even family." By noon, I'd made my first call, not to my mother, not to my sister, but to Detective Hall. I told her what happened. Every word. The shove. The hands on my throat. The silence that followed. She didn't interrupt. She just said, "You did the right thing, Ms. Moore. Come in today." At the precinct, the light was sterile, unflattering truth usually is. I gave my statement. They took photos of my bruises, recorded Sophie's version through the child advocate. It wasn't dramatic. It was methodical. When I came home, my phone was full of missed calls. Dad, Mom, Caroline. Each one a piece of the trap they thought I'd fall into again. I didn't answer. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote everything down, dates, words, actions. Years of emotional manipulation now reduced to evidence. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was documenting. 2 days later, Child Protective Services arrived for a welfare check. My parents called it humiliation. I called it accountability. Caroline showed up at my door pretending concern. "Elena, you're overreacting. Sophie's fine. We're family." I looked at her, her perfect hair, her forced innocence, and said softly, "You pushed my child underwater and called it a joke. That's not family. That's cruelty with good manners." She flinched. For once, she didn't have a comeback. The report was filed. The restraining order processed. I didn't celebrate. I just watched the system piece by piece build a wall between us. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. But it was justice, the kind that doesn't need an audience to matter. They called a family meeting. Of course they did. When control slips away, people like them scramble to stage a show of unity. It was at my parents' house, the same backyard where it happened. The pool water shimmered as if it didn't remember. I did. Mom opened the door, her smile tight enough to cut glass. "Elena, sweetheart, let's be civil. You've caused quite the stir." "I didn't cause anything," I said, stepping inside. I just stopped covering it up. Caroline was there wearing a pastel dress, eyes red but dry. "You're ruining this family's reputation," she snapped. "You've always had a flair for drama?" I tilted my head. "You mean telling the truth?" Dad sat at the head of the table, the same posture he'd used my whole life, king of the house, judge of everyone else. "You embarrassed us," he said. Dragging the police into a private matter, I met his stare. Private matter. I pulled out a folded document and slid it across the table, the court's stamped restraining order. The law doesn't think so. For the first time he hesitated. His jaw tightened, his hand hovering just above the paper as if touching it would burn. "You can't do this to us," Mom whispered. "I didn't," I said quietly. "You did this to yourselves," Caroline scoffed. "So what now? You just cut us off? Pretend you're better than us?" "No," I said, standing. "I'm not pretending anymore." The silence that followed was heavy, not because of guilt, but because they finally understood they couldn't reach me anymore. I walked to the door, paused, and turned back once. "You wanted obedience," I said softly. "But all you taught me was how to survive without you." Then I left, no shouting, no tears, no slamming doors, just the soft click of finality. Behind me, the house that had always owned me felt small, like a stage after the lights go out. And for once I didn't need applause. It's strange how peace sounds when you've lived your whole life in noise. It's not quiet, not really. It hums. It breathes. It fills the space that used to ache. A month after the restraining order, Sophie and I moved into a small house by the ocean. The walls were white. The floors creaked, and every window looked out toward something endless. It wasn't perfect, which is why it was. Sophie thrived there. She painted seashells, laughed with the neighbor's dog, slept through the night without nightmares. Sometimes she'd crawl into my lap and ask, "Mommy, are we safe now?" And every time I'd say, "Yes, we are," because for the first time I believed it. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, I found an envelope in the mailbox. My mother's handwriting. No apology inside, just one line. "You'll regret cutting us out." I smiled, tore it in half, and dropped it into the sea breeze. "I already did," I whispered, and it was the best decision I ever made. That night I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and watched the tide pull away slow and certain. I thought of the backyard, the pool, the grip on my neck, all the ways they tried to claim me. And I thought of Sophie's laughter, free and unbroken. They thought revenge meant rage. But mine was quieter, a life they could never reach, built on the ruins they left behind. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had something better: distance. People say forgiveness sets you free. Maybe. But sometimes freedom isn't forgiveness. It's the choice to never let them matter again. A year later, I no longer dream about the pool. Sometimes when Sophie splashes in the ocean, I still flinch, that old reflex that comes from memory, not fear. But she always looks back at me, her laughter cutting through the wind like sunlight. And I remember we're not there anymore. Our house sits high on the cliffs, a small place filled with morning light and second chances. I kept the walls bare at first, afraid to decorate, as if beauty meant I might lose it again. But slowly, life crept in drawings taped to the fridge, seashells on the window ledge, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. Proof of living, not surviving. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven them. My parents. Caroline. The hands that bruised my neck, the silence that followed. I tell them forgiveness isn't a door you walk through. It's a room you decide not to enter again. My revenge wasn't